Anthony, can you tell me a wee bit about what your Aspirational Award was for and also why you applied for it?
Yep. So my Aspirational Award was for a track bike, or cost towards getting a track bike, because I used to do athletics. I used to be a 400-meter sprinter,
Okay.
and I competed for Scotland. And I was unfortunately had a foot injury which I had to get surgery for last year.
Right.
And then chatting to the surgeon, they kind of said that it wouldn't really be a good idea to run on the foot because the thing would just come back. It was basically a joint inflammation, and they had to kind of remove the excess tissue that had formed because of that.
Right.
It's almost like a kind of arthritis-y kind of thing, but it's not like rheumatoid or osteoarthritis, just a kind of different kind of inflammation. So I was like, well, we need to find something that's not going to impact that. So obviously cycling is probably the lowest impact sport you could probably find, apart from swimming, I think, unless you fall off your bike, of course. But so I'd got a road bike, and I was doing bits and bobs, bit of cross training, and I'm obviously not one for coming from the sprinting background on the athletics track. Doing sprint on like the road is a bit different to doing it in the velodrome, and I'd never really kind of thought about velodrome, and we looked into it, and obviously the costs were quite high. So once we found out we could kind of apply for some money to help out, we kind of delved into that and had a wee look.
Yes, tell me a wee bit about how you found out about it then. And
so it was through uni. I was just going into my first year of uni, and I'd been chatting away to the care experience kind of officer, I suppose you could call her, Rachel, and she'd said really good things about you guys, and that potentially it would help with the whole kind of transition of sport, because it can be a bit more expensive, buying bikes and wheels and all these things compared to just chucking your trainers on and or your running spikes is maybe like £100 max. You'll probably spend a year on that sort of thing. When you're looking at like track bikes, like the frame I got was 1,400, and that was on sale.
Wow! Right,
just for the actual frame, and then that's quite cheap for a lot of track bikes you get out there. So it was obviously it's a change of world for me, thinking like, oh geez, how am I going to be able to afford this compared to just kind of going down to your local running track. And I used to get like free access to gyms and stuff in Glasgow, so I had very little cost.
Yeah.
And I've gone to this new world where it's almost you're having to pay for everything. And you're like, oh no. Yeah. So it was really good.
That's good
to be able to apply for that and use
good
that
stuff. And so when you heard that you'd been successful, how did that feel for you?
Yeah, I was delighted. I was over the moon. Obviously, a weight off the shoulders as well, and I think that obviously my adopted mum, she was obviously very happy for that as well, and she thought it was great. I mean, they probably would have tried to help out as much as they could, but it obviously takes a bit of stress off everyone, being able to kind of buy all your own equipment. And I was using like a hire bike each time I was going, because I was training anyway, just on like a hire bike. It was like £3 a session to pay for the hire bike, which is pretty cheap, but they're not great bikes. So you couldn't really do the same, and you were kind of fixed to one gear. You weren't allowed to change the gears on those bikes just for safety. So I was kind of very limited in my training from like kind of September all the way through to until I got my own bike and all my own gears and all these kind of bits and bobs. So
and so is that what you did with the award then? Tell me a wee bit about what you actually did with that funding.
I bought a carbon fibre frame, track bike frame, a Fuji frame, and then it's not like kind of buying I suppose you can buy these bikes fully built, but you're better to kind of buy bits and bobs because you can get the best equipment. It actually works out cheaper. So I bought the frame and like the kind of, they call it like the, I can't remember the words for it. I'm still very new to the cycling track. Like your kind of crank in your bottom bracket, like your drivetrain effectively. That all came from the one shop, which was really handy. And they put that together for me because I didn't have a clue what to do.
Do you think that receiving an Aspirational Awards, would you say it's had an impact on you and your life?
Definitely. It's basically made me able to concentrate on my studies a bit more and not have to work as much. I work as a massage therapist at the moment. So I've been doing that for a few years. I work for my mate's business through in kind of Motherwell, Wishaw area. And I would have probably had to take on more time. At the moment, I just work a Thursday, usually a Thursday evening after uni, or in the summer, it's like 2 till 10. I'll work, and I would have probably had to take on a few more hours, which would probably put the training further back. And it's just made it a lot easier to kind of get that first step into the new sport.
It really has been about your aspirations of operating at elite level, hasn't it?
Definitely.
It's really about taking it.
Yeah, it's definitely helped me transition from one sport and really start to push. And it's obviously going to take time. It's not going to be like a overnight sort of thing. But I think I mean, the British champs this year was in January, so effectively it was like my first British champs for cycling, and I came 10th in the individual sprint and 10th it was 11th in the sprint and 10th in the keirin. And
Brilliant.
I did like a 10.5 for like my flying 200, like which qualifies you for the individual sprint. And my coach at the end of it, he'd said like no one does that, like come like their first year of cycling comes in and just does that. So he's like, it bodes well. He's obviously not wanting to let ego too much and things like that, and obviously
Yeah.
got to keep your feet on the ground. But I was like, oh, good, that's positive. And he's like, obviously says everything you've had's obviously helped, and it's obviously good that you've got all this equipment so we can actually start training properly and things like that as well. It's really good.
That's cool.
Very different, but really good. And I really enjoy it. I was just kind of happy that the awards allowed me to actually continue in sport rather than, I mean, I probably would have, if I couldn't do anything, I probably would have helped coach my old athletics group or laid a hand somewhere. But I'm really glad I'm actually able to compete, because that was the part I was probably going to miss the most about not being able to run. I'd say I'm just lucky that we've got a velodrome in Glasgow.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously not at the moment, but
yeah.
yeah, it's been really good. I've been really happy, and I suppose it's kind of bad and good timing kind of mixed up with the two. Obviously it's sad, but then I've also got loads of positives from being able to transition to the sport, and that's like the grant obviously helped that up 100% big time. It's been really, really life changing for me.
That's great.
In such a positive way, and it's great.
It's really good to hear. I mean, I think that's what I was going to ask you. You know, do you think your life would be any different now if you hadn't received the award? And you've obviously touched on that a wee bit there with,
Yeah,
you
definitely.
might not
I
have
think
been
it
in
would be.
sport at that
Yeah,
sort of
exactly.
competitive.
It's one of these things. Yeah, if it hadn't, it's effectively made things very easy for me rather than this, which is good. It still means I can sometimes a bit of a challenge. Obviously, great because it makes you probably work a bit harder. But having that given to me and allowing me to actually really put all my energy into it straight away was really good, because I was obviously kind of a bit annoyed and was obviously sad that I wouldn't be able to kind of run again. And it's kind of like, well, you need to, okay, what's the next thing we need to focus on then? So it was like, okay, well, I know I'm getting an award, so cool. I can start training like properly, because I was kind of hanging about thinking, oh, I could maybe get back to running and things like that. And it was like just around about the time I think the award was meant to be like announced if I was getting it or not. I'd like gone for like my kind of visit to the surgeon, just see how things were getting on.
Okay.
And that's when he kind of said, oh, I don't know if it would be a good idea if you did try and run. Again, just because it would get sore. And I was thinking, oh yeah, it's probably you don't want to hear that you're kind of like, yeah, you've got to kind of put your sensible head on, I suppose, rather than, oh, it'll be okay. Like I'm quite an optimist, and sometimes it can be overly optimistic, and that's probably a bad thing at times. But once I knew I was getting the award, I was kind of like, well, we know that this is going to be it's going to be a hard path to take, but it's going to be an easier route now because you guys are helping me out so much.
That's great.
So it's definitely changed my life a lot. And I think my mum and dad are happy as well, because they really like track cycling and things like that. They always used to watch it on TV and stuff, so they find it quite interesting. And
they just after free tickets, is that what you're
saying?
Yeah,
I suppose, yeah. If I get there, yeah. I know.
That's great. I think the final thing was just to ask, you mentioned a wee bit, about the fact that you're adopted, and do you have any thoughts about the impact of Aspirational Awards just generally on young people with care experience?
Yeah, I think, I mean, from my experience, I think even just in the whole general the care system, I think my experience has been very positive. I've been quite lucky, I feel, compared to a lot of children or young adults who have been through the care system, and that's just my story. I'm very lucky that I've been, just the position I am in. I know a lot of people can maybe have a bit more of a hard time, and I think awards like this can definitely show people that there is still support there for like people who have been through the care system or never. I think a lot of people in care, I don't know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but they maybe don't see themselves as maybe being able to be high achievers, or they always feel like they've maybe got something kind of pulling them back. But something like this can definitely allow people that feel like that to maybe feel like, oh, hang on a minute, if these people are willing to help me out and maybe help me do something that will be life changing, you think, well, what else can I get that's out there, or what else can I maybe put my mindset to, to be able to achieve what I want to achieve. So this has obviously helped me out big time. But if you're thinking about it as well, it's obviously a very positive thing that I think a lot of people will benefit from as well. And obviously it won't just be sport and things like that. It could just be just general things they need to do in their life, or if they're needing help with and things like that. So it's great that it's not just, for me, it's obviously very sport specific for me. but I don't know what other people may apply for.
Yeah,
to do
all
it for, but
sorts
they
of
should.
things.
Yeah, which
Yeah,
is great. It's such a kind of broad range. So I
yeah,
think, yeah, definitely. I think more people, as I said, I didn't really know about it until I went to uni. But I think it's definitely scope for, if we can get like the word out more. I think more people would probably. I mean, you probably get loads of applications anyway, but I think you'd probably get even more if more people knew about it as well. So I think it's definitely something to kind of keep growing.
yeah.
Anyway,
That's great. No, I think that's a really good point. Trying to get the message out to more people, and it can be really for anything that you aspire to do in your life.
yeah,
And actually, the trust does this with our own advisors actually developing this initiative,
yeah,
because we believe that everyone can kind of reach their full potential when they
yeah,
have that sort of
exactly, yeah,
support. So yeah, no, that's
definitely,
great. Excellent. No, thanks very much. That was
no
brilliant,
problem.
Anthony. Really good to
Thank
chat
you.
through everything with you.